That is one sleepy baby. Hi, girly. Good morning. Want to go play outside? Oh, I'm so tired. And what are you doing, ma'am? All right, here goes. So, how do I start this? I've been seeing a lot of people online. Sorry for the dogs in the back. I've been seeing a lot of people online saying how they've been twitching and it's been all over and they've been having hot spots and they're afraid of getting the big 3-letter disease that we all know of. If you've ever been on these forums or YouTube videos even explaining, muscle twitching, you'll see all these people commenting, freaking out, thinking they have the big bad one. And I've gone through that, and I've had that for over 3 years now. If I count correctly, it's about 3.5 years since this all started. So I was thinking of making a video to maybe help calm some people down, maybe give them a bit of reassurance, although that's not necessarily what we always need. I think you start off with reassurance and then you move on from there, but that's a whole other topic that I'm willing to make videos about. But I think first things first is I'm going to explain how it started for me, what I've gone through. Maybe you could find some of your story in my own. I'll be able to show you the silver lining and that I'm fine, and you most probably are as well. The only thing I want to start this off with is, obviously this isn't any medical advice. I don't know you. I can't see you. I don't know how you're going about your day. But if you've gone to the doctor and they told you you're fine, then this video's for you, my friend. So I would say all of this started for me in April of 2022. I was working a very demanding job, not necessarily physically, but mentally. I had long hours at work. I was extra tired. I was extra stressed out. Yeah, so I was working a really demanding job and I was really stressed out. I was trying to take more than I should take on, and I was trying to help my colleagues, and I was, had that warrior mentality, go, keep going, hustle. I was also working out a lot. I had a pretty solid workout regimen, a lot of strength training. Well, they're having fun. A lot of running, a lot of cardio. So in hindsight, I was probably adding insult to injury because I was already completely overworked. I was already completely tired. Sorry, the pups again. They keep... Nova! So in hindsight, I was probably overdoing it because I was already super taxed, tired, in overdrive, and I was working out. I had a total lack of sleep. I've always had insomnia, being the super zen person I am. If you put all the things together, I was, overworked, overtired, and working out like a fucking maniac. So obviously, it's going to take a toll on your body, right? That being said, it was in April of 2022. I remember distinctly speaking to my boss via Teams and telling him, that's so weird. When you get an eye twitch? Because everyone's had eye twitches, right? So I'm like, do you know when you get an eye twitch, like what it feels like? And then he replied, yeah, I get those from time to time. I'm like, that just happened in my thigh. And then I thought nothing of it. I was like, well, I guess these things happen, I think the week afterwards, I was talking to a colleague of mine. And again, I had a twitch, but not there. I had a twitch in my pec. I tell my colleague, I'm like, when your eye twitches, I have that in my pec. And she was like, oh, that's, strange, whatever. We moved on. And I remember getting it sporadically throughout those couple of months until July. And then in July, I got a permanent, semi-permanent eye twitch that, little did I know at the time, would last 2 years. So it started in my lower left eyelid, and that lasted until September. And then my upper left eyelid started twitching, but the lower hadn't stopped. And I was talking to my colleagues, and I remember telling them, like, oh, can you see my eye twitching? Because it was going hard, really hard. And they were like, oh, yeah, I kind of noticed, but whatever, because we were like really close face to face working on a project. And then they kept talking to me, and I kept like holding my eye, and I was like, this is so annoying. And then I started twitching on my upper cheek. This is all within like, let's say 2 months. Like, so the lower lid, upper lid, then the upper cheek. And then at one point, I started getting zaps here, like twitches or zaps. I don't know what you want to call them. I didn't even know you had like well, yeah, obviously you have a muscle there. But, I mean, I didn't know that could twitch, you know? Then it moved to my upper lip, my lower lip, and my chin. I obviously started freaking out at that point, and I got an appointment to my doctor's because I was telling myself something's terribly wrong with me. Mind you, I have health anxiety. I've always had it. Well, I call it health OCD because it's really obsessive and compulsive in nature, coupled with anxiety. Name it whatever you want. I made an appointment with my doctor, and I think I was seeing her on the 11th of December. And now we're like at end of November, right? Early December, I had an office party, which I don't particularly like because I don't like to socialize so much. I am the type of person who likes to lay low, keep things very quiet. I'm already, high strung on my own. I don't need the extra energy being thrown at me of like people and music and sounds and smells, and I don't like it. I love my colleagues, however, so I decided to go. And that morning I went into the office because at night we were going all together to that restaurant for our Christmas party, and I got my first twitch on the right side. And I remember, like, I felt my upper eyebrow start twitching. I was writing an email. I shot up, went to the bathroom, and had a full-blown panic attack. You know when you just know something's wrong and you're like, what is going on? Went back to my office, didn't say shit to anyone because I was scared. When you're in fight, flight, freeze, I was in freeze mode at this point. Finished my day, went to our dinner, drank lots to try to forget. And then over that weekend, I was building a table with my husband. And I remember getting this feeling in my fingers like a TENS unit. It's the strangest thing. It's like an electrical zap under the skin. It's not quite a twitch, but it's like these, you kind of feel these little electrical impulses going under your skin. So that was like this new symptom added to the other ones. And I was like, there's so much I can handle at this point. So I'm really starting to freak out, and I'm telling my husband, something's wrong with me neurologically. Like, something is definitely wrong. Those zaps over the weekend, over the course of 3 days, progressed to my knees, to the bottom of my legs, to my feet. I had some on the top of my hands. I've gotten some sporadically since, but it feels like my extremities were the hardest hit at first. I get to my doctor's on that Monday. I have my appointment. I tell her all about it, and she does the usual. If you've gone through this and you've gone to the doctor, they test you for like balance. They ask you to stand on your tippy toes. They ask you that foot flap thing. They ask you to squeeze their hand. They ask you to do this and that. They give you a full checkup. Everything was fine. I was not convinced, but she told me everything is fine. I said I wanted further testing. Inflammation, all the deficiencies you could possibly think of, like my electrolytes, obviously magnesium, which is in the same branch as deficiencies, like CRP markers, what else? Like complete blood count, as any doctor would, prescribe. There's probably a lot of other things I'm just not thinking about, but I remember I had a lot of blood taken from me. What was that? So anyways, I do the whole blood work, and then she calls me back and she's like, everything is Gucci. She's like, your B12's a bit on the lower end of normal, but besides that, everything is Gucci. And I was like, I'm still not convinced. Hun, you're going to have to do more than that for me because I'm freaking out here. So then she gave me a prescription for an EMG. And at that point, I am mentally breaking down, okay? Like, I'm freaking out. I'm starting to twitch from the elbows. I'm starting to twitch from the hands, from the stomach, from the ass, the thighs, name it. I'm twitching all over. The whole thing is going. I look like a blob at this point. I was having a complete mental breakdown, right? Because obviously now I'm naming the physical stuff, but there's also that mental stuff that was coming along with it, obviously. So I was extremely anxious, but not like, oh, I'm anxious, this is scary, hoo. I'm like freaking out, vomiting from time to time for no good reason. I always have this like venom in my chest, like that warm adrenaline feeling that you can't shake off. My throat was always tight, racing thoughts, like really obsessive, like dark, gloomy thoughts. At that point, I was freaking out so hard that I started Googling, as anybody with health anxiety would. I stumbled upon the big bad disease, the big bad 3-letter disease that we all know of. I, by the way, would just like to point out that whoever has had the actual diagnosis, my heart goes out to you. I think that we are lucky in getting benign fasciculation syndrome or benign muscle twitching from anxiety. I know damn well anyone who has that diagnosis would want to trade with ours. So my heart goes out to anyone who's, in that situation. But I believe the people who are watching this, the few people who are watching this right now, most likely don't have the big bad one. So this is for y'all. So anyways, by that point, my mind was really like crazy. I had that insane anxiety. I was getting really gloomy thoughts looking at my dog, thinking I wasn't going to be able to walk her in the summer or even maybe see her, period. I was thinking of my husband and how we just got married. It was just a really dark time in my head, and I was just trying to pull through and get through Christmas and not say anything to anyone because I didn't want to alarm anyone, but I fully thought I was dying. By that point, I was twitching from head to toe. I had those TENS unit feelings, those electrical shock feelings everywhere. I started getting like these, I don't know how you would call them, but like in my legs, it felt like waves of like, it's so hard to explain when you haven't gone through it. It felt like I like everything was moving in a wave at once. I had perceived weakness, which when my doctor tested me, I wasn't weak. So it was really perceived weakness. I had this like numb, itchy feeling in my left hand and my left leg. Anyways, so these things were going on in my body, and meanwhile, I was trying to get through Christmas and not scare anyone with my newfound disease. So I remember the 26th of December. I had pulled through the holidays, pretending everything was fine, and I crashed. Once that was over, I was done. I got at that point a call, I think the next day, to get an EMG, which I was terrified of getting because I was convinced that was it. I was convinced I was going to be told that something was severely wrong with me. And at the same time, I got the flu. So anyways, it was a horrible time. Fast forward to I think it was the 6th or 5th of January. I called my doctor again. I had gone through 3 days without properly sleeping. The last day was just, I had no sleep at all. The thoughts were racing. I was vomiting. I was freaking out. I couldn't control my thoughts. I couldn't control myself. My body was like breaking down into pieces. I felt like I was dying. So I called my doctor and I said, you need to get me off of work. I need a paper signed. I cannot go into work like this. I cannot function. I can't, I'm not, like, I'm having dark thoughts. I'm not doing well mentally. My body's giving up on me. And I think the day after I had my EMG schedule and my parents came with me, because by that point, after the holidays, I spoke to my parents about it. And my mom was like, you for sure don't have that, because she had like she could zoom out and like not get so emotionally invested as I was, because, I have anxiety, like health anxiety, and she doesn't. And she was like reading the symptoms and was like, it doesn't really add up. And I don't think this is what you have. But nonetheless, I was freaking out. I thought I was toast. So went for my EMG, got in there, had the worst panic attack. Got the EMG. So the technician performs the EMG. The doctor then comes in, does like a second round of God knows what with like these needles. And then she finishes and she looks at me and she's like, all good. I was baffled. I was like, how? How is this all good? Like, I'm dying. Apparently I wasn't. I started bawling my eyes out. She's like, oh, you look like you're really anxious. I could see it in your body language. You're all tense. Like, you should really get that checked out. Like, she looked really worried for me, as she should. I was probably a real mess. She then proceeded to say, oh, the only thing I notice is that your reflexes are heightened, and I would like you to get an MRI to rule out MS. So now that the other one's ruled out, now I'm afraid of MS. And then the MRI came in March. Got it. Got the results. Everything was fine. I was still twitching, still freaking out about it. By that point, I started telling myself, listen, it's been, over 6 months. EMG is clean, blood work is clean, physical is clean, MRI is clean. Something's wrong, So I had gotten back on my SSRIs by that point, which I had been taking on and off my entire life. And they were starting to slowly kick in. And by the way, if anyone's ever taken SSRIs while they're in a very anxious state, your anxiety is through the roof when you start them. It makes it worse for the first week or two. Just a disclaimer to anyone who's going to go through that or has gone through that. I know the feeling. You feel like you're insane for the first week. Anyways, that being said, so the SSRIs were starting to work and I was starting to become a little more at peace that I didn't have anything sinister. A year after my first EMG, I got a follow-up EMG, which was yet again clean. And by that point, I started zooming out and telling myself, yeah, so I've overdone it. I think I've in part brought myself there, and I could do a video like on why I think we're twitching, which won't be very different from everything else that you hear or can read on the interwebs. But anyways, I could make a video about that. But by that point, by the second EMG, I was like, okay, this is like, I've pushed myself to this point. I have an anxiety problem. And at that point, I realized I had, I'd say more so OCD than anxiety. And I could also make a video on how I think that differs and why it's OCD, if you don't know. But I'm guessing most people do know. So by that point, I had moved on from the fact that I was probably dying from something, accepted that I wasn't. Still didn't like the twitching, don't get me wrong. But, I was getting to a place where I was like, okay, my mind is playing a big part in this. I was also getting to a place of accepting that I might be twitching forever, and that's fine. I mean, I don't really have a choice, so I better befriend it. And I started working on my mental health, and I started looking into OCD. I started looking into somatic OCD, which is something I now know that I had been doing a lot. And I've been working on that ever since, and I think I've gotten to a pretty good place, albeit not perfect. I'm still a bit anxious, a bit, probably more so than your average Joe there, but I mean, I think compared to where I was 3.5 years ago, if I compare that time to now, stark difference. So anyways, that was my BFS journey. Journey. Now it's been 3.5 years. I'm still twitching, guys. Everything's moving all the time. Some things make it worse, some things make it better. Sometimes there's no rhyme or reason to it. It just happens, and I'm just a wiggly bitch.